Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. I don't believe that David Haye, Dereck Chisora weigh-in was on the up and up. Right now, they're telling us that the difference in weight between the two guys is 37 pounds. What I encourage you to do is to actually look at the video of the weigh-in. Now, if you want an accurate gauge of your weight, how many of us would step on the scale wearing heavy jeans? Take a look at David Haye on the scale. You're going to see that David Haye actually is wearing what looks to be heavy denim pants, right? They're heavy denim. Then when they show you the back view on David Haye, you're going to see that David Haye even has something in his pocket, his back pocket. I'm willing to venture a guess that David Haye's pants alone, with whatever he has in his pockets, probably weighs about 3 pounds. I'm guessing that the weight gap between these two is closer to 40 pounds than it is 37 pounds, right? Let me make a few other points too. I do believe David Haye, even at 207, has the punch advantage early, right? David Haye can hit harder than Dereck Chisora, in my opinion. But this fight's very different than Roy Jones against John Ruiz, right? I believe David Haye has a Roy Jones type style. David Haye has already beaten John Ruiz, but understand how different this fight is. Roy Jones, who had a punch at middleweight, right, and at super middleweight, Roy Jones wasn't a puncher at heavyweight. Roy Jones was just a guy throwing combinations at heavyweight. David Haye's game isn't combination punching. David Haye's game is more of an ambush type, low volume, jump in, then throw a combination, then try to get back out type game, right? I don't think he has the volume to deal with Dereck Chisora on the judges' scorecards. Let me go one step further. John Ruiz was a hit and hold guy, right? He hits you, then he holds you. Take a look at his fights against Evander Holyfield, right? He hits you, then he holds you. With Dereck Chisora, the guy holding on is often the other guy, not him, right? Dereck Chisora is a bull for 12 rounds, right? Take a look at the Vitaly-Klitschko fight. In fact, forget what Chisora did earlier in his career. Just look at his fights against Helenius and Vitaly-Klitschko. Those are two of his more recent fights. Also, when you look at David Haye, you're going to see that David Haye has no body fat along his rib cage. Now, while that works on the beach, right? While that looks great and works in the gym, in boxing, it doesn't work. Right? You actually want some fat. You want some shock absorption on that mid cage, right? Body Beautiful doesn't really work that well in the heavyweight division. And so, in my opinion, the weight difference between these two is stunning, right? There's a huge size difference between these two. And of course, boxers have supreme confidence in themselves. I'm sure David Haye just doesn't see any way on earth that Dereck Chisora is going to make it past the end of the 5th round. But Dereck Chisora has spent an entire career making it past the end of the 5th round. And my point is simply, if this fight makes it into the later rounds, I just think you're going to see the smaller man, David Haye, getting bullied, pushed around, and beaten up by Dereck Chisora, the underdog in this fight, right? Haye has a chance at an early stoppage. Haye's the more talented guy pound for pound. But this is the heavyweight division. There's no weight limit. Chisora is bigger and throws higher volume. I don't think Haye has ever faced an opponent like this who's going to push him in the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th rounds. Let me say this too. Vladimir Klitschko fought in a shell against David Haye. He didn't fight the kind of fight that he just fought against Tony Thompson. Now, if you're a Haye supporter, what I'd like you to do is to close your eyes for a moment and ask yourself who really has had the foot speed to track David Haye down in the later rounds and to keep the pressure on. Certainly not Nikolai Valuev, right? John Ruiz gets dropped early in his fight against David Haye. I concede if Haye is fortunate enough to drop Dereck Chisora early like he dropped John Ruiz, then a weakened Dereck Chisora might be manageable in the later rounds. But if David Haye doesn't do something dramatic, if I don't see Dereck Chisora get knocked down, get badly stunned, right, get diminished in the early rounds, if Dereck Chisora is still standing on his feet, is still 100%, and is still bringing it as we enter the 8th round, I think David Haye's in big trouble. In fact, at that point, I would say that, unless Chisora has an eye closed, can't see, is diminished in some way, right? If Dereck Chisora is as healthy as he was at the start of the 8th round against Robert Helenius and against Vitaly Klitschko, and think about it, both of those guys are huge punchers, right? If Dereck Chisora is as healthy as he was in those fights at the start of the 8th round, I just don't know how the much smaller David Haye, and I'm talking about much smaller than Helenius, much smaller than Vitaly Klitschko, I don't know how the much smaller David Haye is going to hold off Dereck Chisora. I thought Chisora ran over Robert Helenius in the later rounds of that fight, right? I thought Vitaly Klitschko, who knows how to fight inside, he's a different presence inside than David Haye, had to use his experience to defuse the Chisora bomb late in that fight, right? Is David Haye a guy who's going to be able to step forward and clutch you? Is David Haye a guy who really knows how to fight on the inside, especially if you already have survived his power in the early part of the fight? I have my doubts. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments for me here online. I think Haye has a shot at a knockout early. If he doesn't do something dramatic by the start of the 8th round, in other words, get knocked downs, diminish Dereck Chisora, right? If he doesn't do something dramatic by the start of the 8th round, I'm going with the underdog in this one. Let me know who you like. Leave your comments for me here online. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com and, of course, predictboxing.blogspot.com. Thanks for watching.